I think when we look at the UFO subject, it's going to be a problem because this will open up a can of worms, not just about, oh, we're not alone, or are we dealing with some type of interdimensional construct. God forbid, back in the 60s and 70s, the idea was never there. But the phenomenon morphs and changes as we do. It's always one step ahead. And I think the system, disclosure, I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon, unless the phenomenon presents itself on a worldwide level.
Welcome back, my friends. Today, Philip Kinsella is with us, and do we have a story for you guys? So, first off, Philip, would you mind giving us a short intro into your wonderful world?
Yes, thank you, Will, for having me on your amazing show. I'm very honored. My name is Philip Kinsella, and I had some very unusual experiences, four of which changed and challenged my understanding of our genesis, of us being told that we're alone in this universe, and also the big question of life after death. And so I spent many long years investigating, researching, and trying to formulate certain theories in order to create a working model as to what we may be dealing with, or if I use the word up against, that is more, I think, in terms of what we're speaking about here.
Okay. Well, to get, right into it, obviously, this is a subject that's become pretty mainstream over the course of a very few years in a way that obviously is insane to me, growing up in the 90s, where it was very taboo. Although we knew it was being discussed and talked about, it had to stay very fringe, and it's now squeezed its way to the forefront, which has made it better, I think, for everybody to have a more logical, rational discussion about what's going on, which has probably helped you dig through this as well, is because now we can actually discuss it without it being such a ridiculous fringe subject. So with that in mind, could you give us an understanding of exactly what happened? And then we'll go from there.
This was the abduction in 1989 that I had. And of course, at that point, I had no real interest in UFOs, although my identical twin brother Ronald and I had an encounter with a very strange sphere-shaped object with our maternal grandmother in Middlesex, England, when we were aged 13. And that challenged our understanding of reality, because if anyone said that it was a UFO, well, how can an object the size of a football, perfectly spherical and silver, be a UFO? And of course, years later, we kind of get the idea that this could possibly be what, pilots in World War II were reporting as Foo Fighters. But the onslaught of the experience I had in 1989, and we were living in a village called 𝗪𝗡 here in England, in a small cul-de-sac. And even to this day, I'm still trying to understand what happened, although the whole event is as clear as though it had happened yesterday. And most people will say, well, if you're abducted, and I use the quote there, by aliens, normally there is a secretion of memory, but I am very hard to hypnotize. And of course, I record all of the fine details of that experience. And I just have to point out here that you're right. The main emphasis of ufology has transformed throughout the years. And this is interesting because with my so-called abduction, and I say abduction because I couldn't tell you what it was, only that it fitted the classic patterns of what we know to be an alien abduction, was that one part of that experience had me, as the abduction was taking place in the early hours of the morning, moving through solid matter. And although when the experience had finished, I had physical marks, which were quite relevant, and one possible implant within the right ear, or, they call it an implant. And at that point, I wanted to investigate this connection with ufology, where people say, well, it's a very physical experience, but there was a non-physical part attached to that. And this is where I molded a lot of my research into how this is possible. And of course, when you're dealing with ufology, it's not just contained within that subject matter. It also opens up other areas of what we are as humans, where we come from, the big question of life after death. And that was another area that fired up some years after the abduction. Now, the abduction itself was horrifying. And of course, you have to be careful because you have two departments within ufology. Those that love and light, absolutely understandable, and those that see it on a very negative level. And I'm not seeing it on a negative level. We have to look at both sides of the coin when we're exploring this subject, because we can't be biased to say, oh, it's all love and light. My understanding is I wanted to know what the greys were. And yes, embarrassing to say, there were 3 reptilians within that abduction. And of course, years later, when I actually did find a publisher to publish my books, long before Amazon came along and all the rest of it, when I explained about the abduction in one of the chapters to my book, my publisher, John Day, is no longer sadly on this side of life, said we have to retract that because we cannot make any correlation between the reptilians and the greys. And of course, within ufology, the law of ufology, it was all about the greys. And so going back to what you were saying, Will, very, very interesting, because I know that you are top notch on all of these areas. You know, what I'm saying here is that ufology has transformed, interestingly. Back in the 40s and 50s, they were the flying discs. And then, of course, the 60s, we have the Space Brothers. And the phenomena seems to have changed chillingly as we progress as a species with our understanding of science and technology. And this is very interesting. So my real primary research was to have an understanding about what these beings were, where they came from, why they're here. And I can tell you I still don't have a clue, but we do have an idea, a spectrum. Now, to go into the abduction is very long-winded. And there was a very embarrassing part to that where there was an exploratory examination. And of course, I was 20 years of age, Will, at that time, and very, very naive. And I always assumed at that point that ufology and contact was on a very benign level of interaction. This was not evident where I was concerned. And I did suffer, not that I want any sympathy, but I was very open and very honest, and I was invited onto national media television to talk about the experience, and then found myself then at the onslaught of ridicule. And this then opened up another area of how the media cartel work, and also the higher structured systems. I mean, I'm not jumping subject matters here, but it's important to address that we are dealing with a phenomena that the system that we serve tells us does not exist. And yet the acronym of which has changed from UFO to UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. So for something that doesn't exist, I'm confused. So you've changed the acronym. Then you get to the Pentagon. I mean, within your, great countries, I know you've moved around quite a lot, but the United States of America, supreme commanders of that country, there is a problem, I think, in terms of disclosure, because the public have been programmed, conscious dissidents. Oh no, the UFOs are just fairy folklore. Life after death is just faith. Our genesis, our human genesis is linked with some kind of sacred text that it's good to have faith because that doesn't challenge the official system. Right. And the other part to our genesis through the Darwinian thought is ridiculous. And anyone that steps out of line, not only within UFO research, within life after death research or Genesis, is immediately quashed. And I've always wondered, why is this the case? What do they not want us to know? And going back to the UFO subject, a passion, the same with you, with all of these areas of the truth of what we hope we can find, what we're dealing with here, is that they know something. I'm not talking about the governments because they're mere puppets for those perhaps really running the show behind the scenes, the nameless, faceless bureaucrats. But there is definitely now, no conspiracy, there is definitely this design, this agenda to dumb down the masses, to play it down. And I think when we look at the UFO subject, it's going to be a problem because this will open up a can of worms, not just about, we're not alone, or are we dealing with some type of interdimensional construct? God forbid, back in the 60s and 70s, the idea was never there. But the phenomena morphs and changes as we do. It's always one step ahead. And I think the system, disclosure, I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon, unless the phenomena presents itself on a worldwide level. is going to say to the public, oh, yes, I'm sorry, Will and Philip, and all you other wonderful people, we've lied to you. Actually, you've been right. UFOs do exist, but it's not quite how we've promoted it or molded it within the official capacity and within the media machine. And I think, the way that we're seeing this is very interesting because it's telling us, and I think a lot more people are waking up, it's telling us that we have been lied to. There is no conspiracy to be had. But the fascinating question is, what are they? Where are they? And I always joke, Will, and say, if you could tell me what bar they're down, let's go down and have a drink with them all and talk about this, So I think when we're dealing with the UFO phenomena, we have a large-scale issue, a problem, because of the disinformation, misinformation, and structured belief systems, even within ufology, even with researchers and those that are very much interested within the subject matter. And I think belief is very sacred to the individual. And if that belief is challenged in any way, then you've got a problem. So we've got a lot on our plate when we're trying to deal with the Greys, one of the most famous entities within UFO lore. But just going back about the reptilians is interesting, isn't it? I mean, how ridiculous. Philip Kinsella claims that he was abducted by Greys, and then there was an exploratory examination on a personal level that was terrifying with reptilians. Okay, and now what are we seeing is, this is back in 1989. The reptilians must not be mentioned, although they do combine with a great deal of many cultures within our human existence. So, the experience in 1989 led me to really question what we are dealing with. Taking away the fanciful version, the romanticized version, the rawness of that is what interested me.
𝗦𝘂𝗀𝗏𝗂𝗏, the elite private membership club for the modern mystic, exploring powerful teachings on spirituality, self-awareness, ancient wisdom, a deep dive into meditation, mindfulness, and transformational practices designed for those ready to lead their own journey. Are you ready to step up?
Mm-hmm. And I think you're so incredibly right. And I find it almost hilarious. It's comical because I've come up against the media cartel myself. And it is like that. And it's only now that we understand to think of the media in those ways. I mean, there's a great book by Edward Bernays. I believe it's called Propaganda. It's written in, I'm not sure, 1928 or 1938, but it outlines a very interesting way to affect the masses. And this is done through a whole host of techniques, all of which you're seeing right now. But of course, just like any card trick, once you know the trick, once you know what's happening, it becomes a problem for you as the person trying to create an illusion. And so what's happening, like you're describing, is that, yes, because it's now come to the forefront, because people are starting to say, and I think you are spot on, that there is a big problem. Majority, yes, I would agree with you, in the U.S. as well, because once they say, it's already happening, to be honest. Once we know you're lying about this specific subject that's so crucial to our existence and to who we are and to how we relate and the nature of reality, well, we basically can't take anything. Like, what are we doing here with anything? Why, people go, why are we paying taxes? Why are we doing this? What is going on? And so that is going to be a problem. For sure. And it's quite interesting. And I didn't know, and I'm not sure if you have any sort of connection to at all. We've had David Icke on, and I draw obvious correlations to the way that you guys endured ridicule during that time, roughly around the same time. And then here we come years later, and it's like, well, I mean, yeah, a lot of the stuff you guys were saying is now what everyone is saying. And so I find that interesting that you guys have been vindicated in that way. One of the places that I want to touch on here is, obviously, we could, barring going down your abduction experience, I want to understand what you feel is actually going on with them and how they relate to us within reality. I mean, consciousness plays such a massive role. And one of the things that you also mentioned is what this means about us. And it would seem to be that if if we're not who they say we are, we're much more than that. What exactly we are, and how do we relate within this consciousness world and scape? What have you found through, your research and just how the experience has changed you?
The experience changed me. One, because I knew that either I was lying or the system that we serve was lying, and I wanted to find the truth. It is interesting, Will, because the areas of investigation, as I said before, when you're involved with ufology, this will open up other areas. Those other areas that have previously been contained into boxes, rather like cryptids and life after death and Genesis, and there are correlations to be made. And as I said before, if the system that we serve was open and there was transparency to this would open up a can of worms, because it would suggest that this phenomenon has been with us for a very, very long time. It's not something new. Now, us as human beings, interesting. I've been chipping away at that, like many other good researchers on this planet. And our genesis is interesting. We as human beings are endowed with what I understand to be a spirit. Most people call it a soul. And one of the major interests to me about the Greys was, well, what are they? Are they clones? Are they AI technology? Of course, I didn't know about the AI technology back in 1989. But are they clones? And this offered a suggestion to my mind back then, and I have to boast and say I was credited with a revolutionary speculation back in 1996 with an article called Spirits in the Material World that highlighted or directed the attention on the Greys. So they seem to be interested in us as a productive species. And for them, they cannot, as we understand, reproduce. They seem to work as a one hive mind consciousness. And I wondered about the exploration with them about hybridization. Now, I didn't see any form of hybridization. I met Dr. David Jacobs in America, in Arizona, many years ago, and we spoke about this. And I was thinking, well, why is an alien species able to infiltrate our dimension of reality so easily? They come in like ghosts and go out like ghosts. And going back to my abduction, I was absolutely certain that they took the real essence of me, i.e. the spirit, the soul, into their domain temporarily. And when the interaction was made from them on that level, it still affected the physical, biological matter, rather like a near-death experiencer who is dying and they leave their body, they cross over to another dimension of reality, they communicate with loved ones or higher evolved masters through telepathy, and there is no time. And then when they come back, sometimes there's a change within the molecular workings of their body, they're healed. So, I was thinking about the Greys and what they were after, what they wanted. And I wondered whether or not they had counseled themselves out of creation through the process of self-replication, and that they had lost themselves through the whole connection of our link with the Godhead, the God source, the ultimate of all that is. And that they're trying to find a way through us, because as humans, we're individual, we're unique, we love, we create, we are so different from all other life forms on this planet. And they have a vested interest in this. And I thought, well, if they are, and this is a theory and just a theory, there are many theories that we have to embrace. Why are they creating a new genus? Are they trying to replicate or trying to capture that part of the spirit that they don't have? And this also brings into the fray the incarnation, reincarnation processes, which I understand and I kind of believe about us all as sentient beings. So rather like a signal that goes into a mobile phone network system, you've got the mobile phone that's the hardware. The signal is the reality. And we understand the information as it hits that translator. So I kind of understand that something with them, or a group of them, the Greys, had gone wrong. And I also understand that it's possible that the Greys could be subservient to the reptilians, as we call them. We don't know for sure. And I'm like, well, where are they all? We've got the reptilians, the tall whites, the Greys, you name it, we've got them all. And it's like, what are we dealing with here? Where are they all? Why are they secreted? So this also opened up another area of understanding that perhaps our genesis leads back to the very beginning of time, and something that the system has tried to play down in terms of us as humans. All of us have been genetically engineered by some other intelligent species, but we have the divine spark of consciousness, the spirit in us. So, the understanding of the research with the Greys was paramount to me trying to work out, well, contact back in the 60s and 70s was on a very physical level of interaction with people. The UFO would land in a remote area and contact was achieved. There would be some lost time. And now I think what happened is that because we are more vastly populated and we have more technology at our disposal, the Greys or whatever's behind them have upped their abduction program and utilized another new way of carrying it out. And so, but, this is very fascinating. So are we dealing with something that is a part of what we are, or are they separate from what we are? Why are they interested in us? And I did have another idea and think, well, is it possible that we as a human species are on our way out and that the Greys could possibly be our geneticists to some level and creating a new species that are able to exist elsewhere within another dimension of reality or wherever? People tell you what they are. We don't know. People say they're us from the future, they are AI technology, they're demons, all these different areas. We just don't know. But what we do know is that the phenomena is very clever and it secretes itself within the very depths of the human mind. And this is an area that they know they can play with. So I think that, again, when you're dealing with ufology, I will say very gently, it's unhealthy to keep yourself locked within that area of research, because you will find that there are other connections. And giving one other example, not jumping the gun again here, but dogman, werewolf encounters, Sasquatch. We hear these cases where mind speak has occurred between the person and the dogman or the Sasquatch on rare occasions. Mm-hmm. Those on the other side communicate in very much the same way, and so do aliens. So, we've got to try and work out whether or not we're dealing with an ultimate force that's shaping itself within our individual reality, or we could be possibly dealing with different species that are operating on varied levels of interdimensional awareness, ultra-dimensional awareness, whatever you want to call it. So it's very, very interesting. And like you, it's fascinating. You're driven by this desire within the truth, because that's all we want. The system we serve, girl, tells us you live, you're programmed, and you die. Come on. I don't understand this. And this system we're beginning to find has, as you said quite rightfully, has lied to us, not just about UFO field investigations, but also about life after death. And it knows that if anyone steps out of line, where you be an archaeologist who discovers, something that threatens the model of how the system wants us to see it, what is the big deal? I mean, come on, okay, so there may be other life forms out there. We know that, right?
All right.
Genesis is incredibly complex, but there is another area that the system will not promote. And this will also, in turn, upset the delicate balance, the infrastructure of those who carry sacredly within their hearts religious ideologies. We have to be very careful. So, the passion, the drive to understanding the larger picture is what we're all about, like yourself. And when you're touched by the singularity, it changes you. It's rather like the hitchhiker effect. Because you're looking at life, you're frustrated with life because a lot of people, God love them, are going round in that circle. God love them. There's nothing wrong with that. I'd rather be in that. In fact, the phenomena has created more problems for me, but good problems, because it's like saying, hang on a minute, there's a lot more here that we need to work out.
𝗦𝘂𝗯𝘀𝗁.com. Exclusive content and programs on manifestation, making money, hidden knowledge. Finally, reach your full potential.
And have you read up? Have you checked out any of the research that does get declassified from some of these? Because simultaneously, we have, civilians trying to understand what is happening. At the same time, we have our governments across the world, and of course, these hidden transnational cabal-like systems that are operating that we are also kind of starting to piece together that something's going on behind the scenes. They don't have all the answers too. They have an extended amount of knowledge and resources. It would appear that they clearly had a better consensus of the issue or thing that we were either up against or the nature of reality than the civilians, who, of course, they're literally actively trying to distract or keep the nature of reality out of their true grasp. And so I've seen this is a rabbit hole that one can go on and on and on and on and spend a day, weeks, whatever. But, you've got the Stargate program. You've got declassified information from, I've had on Tom Campbell and other people who are involved in the Monroe Institute. And there were clearly CIA. The CIA was obviously there. They wrote about it, And have you seen anything in the declassified documents or just in your research that is giving you confirmation of some of the things that you believe? And the reason I ask is because you bring up one of the points that I just cannot, my brain just keeps looping me around this thought, because there's a general consensus in the world that we don't know and we won't know and we can't know. Like, humans are incapable of understanding, and that permeates society. And it's kind of like a safe thing to say, like, who knows? We'll never know. Like, there's just so much to know. And I always thought, because of some of the elites, and I don't want to put it in the case of, say, the problem is truly they have some knowledge and we don't, and therefore, But if you had true understanding, either that you're in a simulation, that this is this, that life after death, and you could actively prove it to the way that, we understand that water is good for us, that I can pick up this pen, because it's abstract to the common man. It's abstract, even for people, and myself, who's had out-of-body experiences, and I have, picked up and had strange things happen to me. I still come back and here I'm in the world and I kind of do my stuff and yada, yada. But if I had technology, outside of myself, some form of external technology that could help me confirm these things, that would change the way that you reacted to the world, what you would do, how you would think about life in general and all this. And so you have a whole host of problems there. Have you seen anything that helped confirm that for you?
Well, I will tell you that through the research, we are all, do researchers to a degree when you get involved with this, and we're trying to find our connection links with it. What was very interesting was that when I first looked at the Roswell crash, and I'm no expert, but it just seemed very strange to me that these UFOs, they come into our reality, and I thought, well, perhaps it's possible that from their dimension of reality, that they have to mold themselves into our reality. Now, what's interesting, I spoke to Dr. Irina Scott, and she's a brilliant scientist and her work for the Battelle unit. And one of the things that they found within certain crashed UFO retrieval programs was a small element of something that did not conform with anything we have on Earth, but a large proportion of the material was Earth-based. Now, I thought about this and I thought, well, hang on a minute. Does this mean that the force itself is coming from another dimension of reality and that it's actually building itself up, constructing itself as it enters our airspace? And of course, when you go back to the Roswell, I know it's been done to death, but what's interesting, looking at it at different angles, it was, the army, the Roswell Arms, the army admitted, as we all know, that they had in possession a flying disc, and then it would turn out to be a secret Mogul weather balloon. So secret, in fact, and I did state this, that the army didn't even know it was out there. It took a rancher, Max Brazel, to go find the debris. But what's interesting is that if it's true that they had salvaged secretly, as through Colonel �ฬ𝗪𝗀𝗀 in his book, The Day After Roswell, that they were able to replicate this so-called technology, it just appeared to be in line with what we could kind of like replicate. So does that mean to say that the intelligence behind whatever's responsible is guiding humanity into a different area of evolution? Now, I agree, because in certain declassified documents, we are looking at something that is not completely physically based. This phenomena can come in and go out, morph itself, rather like the dogman, the Sasquatch, the UFOs, you name it. So this fascinating area of interdimensional reality, and I believe that if you read a lot of the experiences that most people have had, people are seeing these windows opening in space, portals as they call them. So it could be possible that the cabal, those at the top, and I've always thought about this, they have, throughout the epochs, have placed this fear and mental subjugation in the churches. Don't think outside the box, Will, because if you do, you're a witch and will burn you or you will drown you and keep you in that box there. And those at the top are initiating and using the mind, because the mind is incredible. It is the builder. It creates everything and anything. And they are utilizing this. And I did think another area to this, interdimensional area, is that, think of this, Will. Have you thought about this? And I'm sure you have. Most of society is contained, consciously subjugated. And the system, I believe, is aware of where people are and no conspiracy, what they're doing, keeping in check, keeping in line. But there are other people who are, like yourself and many others, consciously elevated above that bubble of control. And I believe the system is aware of that. And it's possible they could send those agents in, i.e. the Greys, to check up on you, to see why it is that you're operating differently. What is about you? Let's put an implant in you. Let's check you out. And this goes even further with regards to spirit. We're born into a world where we think there's just one ultimate force of all that is. I don't doubt that. But in terms of the incarnation, the Egyptians, for goodness sake, were aware of the planetary alignments. They know about their own star system. They know about where their consciousness, their soul would be directed. And is it possible that, other souls have come in to incarnate through this drama of life, and that this cabal is holding us all down? There's another thing as well, too, that it wasn't so much through research or open revelation, but it was what was happening before that. The pandemic occurred. Everything was rising upwards. I could feel consciously that people were, coming up, and then all of a sudden, bang! It was like, no, we can't have that. We've got to bring you right down to this sphere again. And I knew at that point what had happened. Now, another interesting thing, if I may very quickly, is that I feel that I had an implant in my right ear, and that could have been, we can't prove it, from the abduction in 1989. It gave me a lot of problems, a lot of jip. Went to the doctors 3 times. And the last visit there, the day nurse saw me because they probably thought I was wasting their time, because I felt the thing move back in my ear. And so the day nurse looked in and she said, I'm just going to get a doctor. And the doctor came down and had a look and with a device, and she said, it looks like it's still healing. It has a crystalline structure to it. And then she left it. She went back to work, and the day nurse said to me, have you been abducted by aliens? Now, I went back to my car far worse than when I got there. They didn't send me to an ear specialist. Now, I had to have the jabs because my brother and I were going to America to do some talks. The only way you could get there was to have the jabs. It was all cancelled anyway. It was when I had the big one, I've only had 3 and no more, that I became very ill. And there was one night where I lost an hour, and there was roaring over the house with lights, and it's gone. The thing is gone. So interestingly, whether or not and I did mention this in one of my books, whether or not the jab had disrupted it. I spoke to another very good friend, Paul Sinclair. He's a wonderful researcher in England with cryptids and light phenomena, UFOs. And I explained this also to another well-known researcher in America. And they're saying that's interesting, So did they remove it because it had buggered something up for them? I don't know. So I believe that when you're looking into this subject matter, especially with the cabal, yes, there's other areas that are very, very dark. Cattle mutilation, I'm looking into at the moment, and dare we mention that other word, human, because you'll find that this is very sensitive areas, and this is what I'm looking at the moment. Not just trying to pull the connections from one to the other, but what is wholly responsible? What's behind this force? Why are they doing this? And because all we want to know the bigger picture. And who said that you're born, Will, and you're going to be educated this way? A basic form of education, absolutely, totally. The morals, yeah. But then now you need to go and get a job, and you're not going to ask any questions. You're going to pay taxes, and and then just follow the wheel, and then come in and go out.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hang on a minute, and what's wonderful and delicious is that those at the top, the cabal, are revealing themselves openly because people are now starting to question. They're really trying to push down. But UFOs, again, one area again of absolute fascination. Oh, they know it's there, but they are tight-lipped. They're saying, no, we can't say anything. So in terms of disclosure, I don't think that's going to come anytime soon because, unfortunately, we have a lot of disinformation, lies, people trying to push you off the rail, and it's a bit of a nightmare. But you and I and many other good people know we have a problem, and it is a problem. And it's relevant even to this day, more so than it was back in the 60s and 70s when they're promoting the wonderful brothers. Oh, they've come to save us. They come to share their knowledge. Well, where is it? Where is it?
So true. That's such a good point.
It's like the phenomena, when it connects with us, is very, very clever. It knows how to shape. I'm not saying that all of it is negative, but like humans, we have the two aspects to us, don't we? And there's something definitely on Earth that's going on that's like, very interesting, I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's off. And it's so funny because, around that period of the 60s, if you start to look into it, the messaging that's going on, the interplay between obviously the Cold War going on and what's going on, and it gets so mixed and mushed. You're going, what's going on? And then when you get that overall message that they're here to save you, and this is what you need to do, and humanity needs to do this, and you start really digging into what's going on. I mean, it does lead to one of the questions that I'm going to have a little later, which is the government involvement in the disinformation, and they're running into what's going on and making sure. And it's a very, what's funny is that even with all of, it's a massive subject. There's a lot for us to try and understand. And even with all of this, we can still point out these core things. And it's really interesting. From our channel, we teach principles on my football channel where we teach this. And we teach principles because there's so much to know about, like, say, wanting to go play professionally. Well, in the same case here, there's so much to know, so many different things, from the Greys to the reptilians to this, to abductions, to what the government's doing, what they're studying. And it's like, okay, well, if we just sit back and understand, what is it that they're trying to tell you? What is the current message? Well, for a long time, the messaging was simply, you are meat and bones and flesh, and this is what you have here. Pay attention to that. Take care of what's right in front of you. Stay in your lane, and that's it. And we did that for so long, and I know this is a thing it's thousands of years old, that people have been pushing for this, to try and keep the masses under control, because that's the easiest way to do it. If you don't know that you're greater than that, you won't try to be anything other than that. And of course, just like you said, now that the questions, like you said, it felt that we were rising, all right? Mm-hmm. And the biggest problem is questions. When people start digging into questions and trying to understand. But if their goal, based on what I saw, was to make sure that you don't question what you are. We're going to tell you as much as we are, you just a little, you want to soul, just that. Go watch Netflix and shut up, and it's like, it worked. It worked for a very long time, and it's still very powerful to some degree. It's not like, I would say that people who are waking up outnumber. We have a problem in the society as well with the fact that we have comfort too, which is fighting against us, because it's nice to sit on your couch in your air conditioning and watch Netflix and eat food, which you don't have to move from either. So we have some issues still to go. And another on top of that, you have critical thinking, which we don't want to throw that out the window, because you're not saying every single story that's come out on UFOs is correct, that it's every conspiracy is true. No, you're trying to dig rationally through that noise in order to use your left brain to do that. And so that does bring me to my question, which is, there are people that we've had on, for instance, we had on Dr. Stephen Greer a couple of times. I don't know if you have thoughts on him, but he's found himself in an interesting point here as people are starting to pull things up from his past and connections to potential secret intelligence to Mossad, and as well as potentially living a double life, which I won't go into here. But one of the things that he does is trying to make contact. He has I forget the name of his program there that tries to make contact with extraterrestrial
𝗤𝗙 initiative.
𝗤𝗙.
Yeah.
There you go, 𝗤𝗙. So my question to you was going to be, I mean, having such an intense experience that you've had, have you looked at ways for you yourself to either connect, whether that be through your own consciousness, meditation, other things, etc., or how's that looking?
Well, we did that experiment on the 8th of June, 1998, and we were awarded. I got involved with Rendlesham, and I teamed up with the original investigator, Brenda Butler. Through a series of synchronicities, we had met up in the forest, and then, of course, we both co-authored. It's now out of print, Sky Crash Throughout Time, which was a continued investigation. And when we were doing our research in England's Roswell, as it's known, I actually met with my brother and some good friends. We had dinner with Colonel Charles Holt, an impeccable character. But we did an initiative before Dr. Stephen Greer created his 𝗤𝗙 initiative. And that was at Rendlesham. And a week before we had gone to the forest, we had done a meditation. And it's all documented in Sky Crash and in another book. And calling occupants, I got the idea from Karen Carpenter's song. I thought, is that possible? Let's see if we can do it. Let's try it. And there was me, my brother, and Susan. And when we had gone to the forest on the 8th of June, 1998, we had gone into the farmer's field, Capel Green, and we sat there and we had sent out intentions. We were awarded with a red light to begin with that was witnessed, that was very strange, and shot across the farmer's field. Half of it on the outside of the forest was dirt and the other was vegetation. And it was night. The experiment was done just before 10 o'clock at night, and with the appearance of a massive UFO that appeared above some trees, was in the shape of a pyramid with a gap in a circular undercarriage that moved. It made no sound, but it was massive. And I started to run towards it. And of course, half-crazed hominid, getting my jeans soaked through the crop, although it was dry, through the dew. And as I got nearer and underneath the tree, it was huge. It just went out. I tripped and fell, and it just went out like a light. So I thought, wow. So the mind, are they connecting with my thoughts, or am I projecting this myself? Am I creating this reality through a wish, a demand? And there's, people will say, no, it's this, or we don't know. There were no aliens to be had. Of course, the media will run off spills. That's fine. I mean, but it proves something to me, and that the intelligence, that the force behind it is aware of you. And it's the same as like psychic work. I'll just give an example. I went to go and see a very brilliant medium when my maternal grandmother, passed over. And thank goodness she was good, because she used to work the cases in the America, cold storm cases. And she said to me, you have a spirit guide, a North American Indian. I thought, there we are, North American Indian. They're all North American Indians, Anyway, when I did meditation, I was rewarded with the image when I was asking what this North American Indian. There's a reason I'm saying this. I was asking its name. I need a name from you. What's your name? And it showed me the images of wolves and a North American Indian playing a flute. And I thought, Wolf Song. Is that your name? Ah, so you're working through symbology. And anyway, the next day when I was at work, a guy came into work and he was wearing a T-shirt with wolves and a North American Indian playing a flute. So I got my sign. So I thought, well, through the medium's suggestion through to me that I had a spirit guide, did I then create the spirit guide? And this higher form of consciousness, the higher part of me or wherever is, making that connection to make me realize, well, yeah, Philip, but, bang, bang, bang. It doesn't matter if I'm separate from you or I'm a product of your imagination or creation that's become into corporeal nature, but I'm here. So the same with the UFO. And I think when we look at it, within each and every one of us, we hold that divinity, we hold that divine spot. Yes, we're human, we do this, we do that, we're humanized. But on a higher level, when you are touched by the singularity, my God, there is something that occurs that cannot be explained. It's a wonderment. It was incredible revelation. And, this is, some people said, oh, it's the military that we're tricking you three into seeing this with holographic projection. Come on, we were three unimportant individuals. Why would the military be interested in us, for goodness sake, to make us see a UFO and then go tell people who wouldn't believe you anyway? I'm not interested in any of that. If people said, I'm not, it's what you feel, what you have experienced that changes you. And the catch-22 situation is you want to tell people about it. And people say, oh, you're making money from it. Oh, you've written it. But, well, how else are you supposed to get the information out there? Use your imagination to these people. I mean, you've got TV, right? News. Well, we know that's corrupt anyway, most of it. And the only way to express your feelings now in our modern world is through technology. And you can't just write a book and give away free copies because you'll make no money and you won't be able to put food on the table. Jesus Christ worked as a carpenter. I'm sure that Muhammad and all the others had to have some kind of jobs, it's that level. We're in the material realm, right? So, but that was interesting to me about, on an individual level, the state of your consciousness, your creativity, the link of you, what you are, what you represent. These energies are obviously manifestation through to you, and everyone's trying to squeeze it into the same box and saying, this is what it is, this is what it is. And yet there is morphology, the transmutation of this is evident and comes through on that structured level, on a unique level. And giving an example, werewolves, right? Werewolves, dogmen, yeah. Product of human imagination? We don't know. Paul Sinclair up here in England, wonderful researcher, he's found, interestingly, certain geographical locations of where these dogmen, you would call it your great countries, the dogman, a werewolf here in England. We're very old-fashioned, Will.
Yeah.
But these geographical locations, he has found out that the name of the place is like dog, wolf, and it's like almost like, and I've pondered as well, without jumping too far off the mark here, the places like your national parks, we hear a lot of strange things happening. And I wondered, because those areas are not tainted or crushed by the noise of other people's consciousnesses, and whether or not that the nest of this, the hive of this activity is able to manifest itself and come in quite easily with no form of disruption. So I think that the names, spelling, creating with the mind, generating these realities into our construct. And of course, on the earth, we are so narrow. We've been narrowed within our filter frequency of conscious awareness. Nothing is able to get through unless you cannot try to prise that open and saying, okay, come on in, let's see what you're about. And then it's like, oh, my goodness me, that scared the crap out of me. Or, oh, wow, that was fantastic. So, we're looking into consciousness and to the creative factor. And people will say, oh, no, that's a product of your imagination. What? Imagination is a little box in the brain that opens and closes now and again. Imagination is mind. What do you think we use it to create with, for goodness sake? It's like, so yeah, I didn't mean to go off the mark there. I get a little bit excited and it's like,
You didn't. As a matter of fact, you led to the next question, because we on this podcast we discuss so much, because I have such fascinating individuals like you come on, and I always ask them this question about how the mind is related to manifesting, because I think it's a central tenet within our lives, and one with which, can get a little murky through potentially the New Age movement. And, there's questions on how that got, how it is now. But to keep it focused, I find it really interesting generally hearing directly from people like you on the power of the mind and what that role and the role that it plays in creating something within your own world. And so the way that I'll formulate this is having an understanding of the mind in the way that you just portrayed it. Do you do anything, or could you explain to someone who is now 45, 50 minutes into this podcast, how they can utilize their mind? Because they're obviously not going to learn this in school. We've already established that. And so could you give them an idea of how they could utilize their mind in some way, shape, or form to create peace or happiness or any material thing, like you said, because you are going to need to pay for your food, in their life? Is there anything that you have created or the way that you understand it?
It's taking me nearly 50 years, in ascertaining that, that there's something not quite right in the distribution of information, and especially with these amazing subject matters that we are briefly covering here. But I will say to anyone, like you, I mean, you're a celebrated footballer, right? You had a belief. You believed in yourself. Belief is a very powerful form of transmutation for anyone. Even if someone, people say, how do you do that? How do you do this? Well, first of all, what you need to do is believe in yourself and stop listening to all of the disruptive noise and disruption within the world, because this system is turning people against people, even on our level of integration. And I say to people, I don't like the look of you. They say, get real, because mobile phones all look different, but the signals are all the same. It doesn't matter about the encasement of what the technology is. It is the actual signaling that's impressed with unique information. We are all connected to the same source. And if only people understood that, this great divide, people want to connect with other people. People don't want war or destruction. It's a system we can see that's turning people against people. Now, for you, as an individual out there who want to make a difference, belief is powerful. How you view your world is how you see it, as long as it's good, as long as it's loving. And sure, you'll get a lot of difficulties along the way. But belief shapes reality. Try not to take into effect a lot of the stuff that's people telling you, you're not good at this, you can't do that, this is impossible. I remember a line from The Black Hole, Walt Disney's The Black Hole, a good kind of dark film. I love the soundtrack. When Hans Zarkov said, impossible only resides in a dictionary for fools. And I love that. So I think and feel that for anyone, first of all, start to switch off from a lot of the negativity, the things that's making you feel bad, the fears, the disruptions that you get, even from ordinary people around you. We're all fantastic, but you know what I mean when I mean, the ordinary folk, bless their hearts, because we're all important. And then start to focus upon yourself and say to yourself, I can do it. I am me. I am God. I am all that is. And it's hard because the system will continuously promote all this negativity and disruption. What I started doing now, when I was younger, I used to see things happening. And when I forgot about it, it would happen. And I thought, well, am I creating that? Not all the time, but certain times. And I thought, am I projecting that reality? And then when I forget it, it happens. And within quantum, we find that distancing within the quantum realm about the areas that one can affect the other, vast distances, there's no separation between them. So I thought, well, I cancel them out. I used to say, no, God, no, never, God, never. And when I was younger, about 13, 14, I had to bring God into the equation. I'm sorry, but he is the boss after all, or she, the amalgamation of all. So I think a lot of these manifestation techniques, a lot of these books that's out there, how you can bring things into your life. There's this basic principle, no matter which author creates or words it. It is believing in something now, believing it now. If it's good, believe that you have it, and then let it go. The difficulty is, how often do we have to believe in it? Are we going to believe in it so much that we counsel it? It's always like those situations where people have a massive row and they keep thinking about it gets worse. Once you walk away from it, it seems to resolve itself. So it's energy. It's this really complex interplay of energy that we're trying to understand on varied levels. But as long as you're positive, as long as you're honest, and and you embrace other people's ideologies, you can't reject them. People have told me where the reptilians come from. They've even given me their names and their high commands. I'm like, I've lost the plot. It's hard enough as already trying to get to the central process of what we're dealing with.
Right.
But I think the mind, the system that we serve, has tried to disable us, divide us, evil. And I think it's up to you to self-empower yourself with the knowledge that you are part of divinity, that you have the right to create your world the way you see it. And I go back to you, well, the same with, I'm not a bigger star than you are, you're a big star, but you had a dream, you had a vision, and you pushed yourself forward through that within your heart, your soul, your spirit. And you did it. Against all the adversity, you did it. And I say to people, all of you have the ability to do that. Don't look at someone else and think, oh, I could never be. You can. It's not about ego or like, oh, we have to have a little bit of ego, otherwise we wouldn't be here. But like, oh, look at me. No, it's not about you. It's about everyone, and about people need role models. You've had people look up to you, and that is good. We need that more in the world. We need people to look up to other people to say, wow, I've had them in my life. The Queen was one of them. Her Majesty the Queen. And I had the letters on the wall here, 33 years of them, from a dream that we had with me and my twin brother with 𝗦𝘂𝗯𝗀𝗀𝗃, a failed project that didn't see the light of day, that was wrangled over by other companies, and all they were interested in was about money. Well, money's interesting, is good, it's interesting, but it just got messy. And that was something I'll always remember from my heart, and other people that have come into my life that have given me the support and the help, and I always value that. They've gone now, most of them. But that's what I say. So sorry, Will, a bit long-winded, but you've got a passion with it.
Not at all. Not at all. It's funny because you bring up a very good point that I think a lot of people get stuck on, and some of the young players that we discuss, they're afraid of the ego aspect of let's say manifestation, I guess, and it's funny because then I'll ask some of them, like, who put that desire into your head? And sometimes you really look at maybe this one came from society and people said it's good to be a influencer, and everybody, all kids, I want to be an influencer. 30, 40 years ago, everybody wanted to be a doctor, a lawyer, like, right. Me growing up, it was doctor, lawyer, this, I don't know, something of that nature was, in the zeitgeist. And now it's influencer. All right. And so, well, behind that, if you see some of the, let's say, successful influencers, most of them, not all of them, but many of them are, and I guess I have to put myself in that field.
Yeah.
It's based around their passions. It's based around something that God imprinted on me somewhere, and this is where I'm drawn towards doing that, and then that is what I put out. I have no desire. And there's a famous footballer named �ฬ𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 playing for AC Milan. And he has this quote now, sometime after when he finished playing, where he discussed that something seemed strange about the young group, that everybody wanted to be a star. And he's like, everyone wants to be a star. And he's like, well, that was like when he was growing up, no one wanted to be a star. Everyone just wanted to be good at football. Like all the players wanted to be, I want to get really good at this. And then, okay, some stars would happen, I guess. But he said, it like changed because now your focus is there. And I see the same thing, with some of the young players growing up. The first look is external rather than internal. My drive, as you mentioned, was all internal. I wanted to do this thing. It was for me. And the only other aspect of this that you touch on, especially in the belief aspect, one of the funniest things for me was I learned my understanding of manifestation came from my dad. And he had taught me how to do that, to visualize before games, of course, which is a very natural thing. And a lot of players have anxiety before games and this, that, and the other, and so I learned how to manage that in order to utilize that. The problem for me, of course, dumb me, was thinking, well, that's great. That works for football. I'm not utilizing that for anything else. I had no idea until much later in life that this is something that could be used to, just benefit everything that you have going on. And so yeah, I find that interesting, but that's what you said is going to ring true for a lot of people if they start going down that path and start utilizing that. It's really not all that long before you can start to see positive influences within your world if you truly do that.
Yeah.
As a pretty stark switch, I'm kind of curious because you mentioned obviously now this implant and way back then is gone.
Yes.
To the best of your knowledge, it's gone. Do you have any idea what it was doing? Did you have any interaction with it? Did you notice anything? Is there anything at all that you felt it was doing?
Yes, I didn't have, Will, any feelings about what it was doing, but I was very much aware that it was there. That was the disconcerting part to it. Now, this led me then into researching about implants. What are they? And 𝗤𝗲𝗰𝗀𝗀𝗀, another dear friend of mine, wrote about his abduction experience, incident at Devil's Den, horrifying. And the implants that they actually photographed in his leg. There's no way that the entities could get them in there. So we're not really sure about I knew it was there. And I will tell you that when it, can I prove it? No. And I'm not here to prove anything. It is a personal thing. And this is what led me into that area of investigations. What's interesting is that when it went, and I think that had been removed. I can't prove that to anyone, but I'm sure that whatever they were, or another force, it could have been, removed it. I felt freer. I felt, I always felt like I was held back. And I spoke to another well-known podcaster about this. And she said, well, she felt that she's got one and that they have been holding her back on some level, or not allowing her to move within her life. So I think it's possible that, it's some kind of tracker. Another author, you'll find him interesting, Steve Aspin here in the UK. He wrote a book called Out of Time. Brilliant man. We're good friends with him and his lovely wife. And he believes that there is some kind of intergenerational connection link, that these greys are looking into what we are, where we come from. And interestingly, blood is very much top of the agenda with a lot of the darker side to this phenomena. We shouldn't really, address that too much, but that is interesting. So I think and feel that whatever these things are, I saw it as like a tracker. Maybe they could download all of your feelings, your thoughts, what's going on. They probably could see through your very eyes. Who knows? We're not sure. But I do know that, like yourself, it wouldn't surprise me that within any family, if there's been someone who's had what they call an abduction or been at close range with UFOs, even heck, encountering those that have crossed over to the other side, that there is some kind of genetic link within the family. Our maternal grandmother was psychic, and we were there, my brother and I, when we had viewed the silver orb that came over on that time, which was fascinating. And of course, did I think it was UFO? No, because UFOs, we were told, were big crafts. But then as you get older, you kind of like try and put the pieces together. So I in terms of the implants, we're not sure. It is distressing. I know Whitley Strieber, Paul Sinclair told me what Whitley Strieber said, that they actually fashion the thing out of your own body. They take scoops.
Why?
So it isn't rejected, the tissue, so that it's not rejected by the body. And that would make sense, obviously. So I don't know. I don't have any answers to that. We're still looking into it, but it's interesting.
What's one more question if you got the time for it? If it's okay. Yeah. And this may be a subject that you don't know a whole lot about, and I'm going to kind of tie these two themes together just for the sake of time. But our ancient knowledge, we have also, it's also probably been messed with, because as you say in the very beginning of this, you discussed an archaeologist may find something, and then we just go, nah, sorry, that doesn't fit the the model of reality that we want you to believe in. Therefore, we're just not going to live there. So much of that has been happening. I have some good friends now. Matt LaCroix, is a very good friend of mine, and he is currently out and about studying this sorts of stuff to try and break down what is going on and what was happening in these ancient sites.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. Something is wrong. These are not hunter-gatherers. These people were not stupid, as you're telling me. Something's up, right? And I feel like, there's a good collective of tremendous researchers out there right now that are kind of figuring that sort of thing out. And so I'm curious, do you at all, can you attribute any of the things that you've experienced or that you've studied to, you mentioned Egypt, you mentioned ancient Egypt, right? Are we to understand, because this would be, it's a bit hard for us to comprehend. Are we up against potentially some form of an intelligence that has been here from the literal beginning of or before our beginning, what is this? Because obviously within, let's say, recent history, we have the ability now to be a form of a global society in a true way, and we're kind of sharing this information, and it seems kind of recent, and we're talking about disclosure as if like this is thing happening really quickly. But is there, or has anything to you pointed to this true ever? Because you mentioned Roswell. Roswell is like, now we're like, oh, okay, like they just showed up, that's like the thing. Here they are, 1940. We just happen to be the humans alive on the planet. Eons of time going on. But what is it? What is our connection to these ancient worlds or these ancient civilizations, and potentially who we're dealing with, who have been around even before we were here?
Yes, that is fascinating, isn't it? I mean, if you go into the ancient codices, it tells us, they call it fables about, gods that walk the earth. And I'm absolutely convinced that we are some form of byproduct from them. And that this is clear, evident in terms of our evolutionary development. Because if we are true natives of this planet, all of us, we shy from our very own sun. We're not very adapted to the environmental conditions. Which is curious because all of other nature has adapted to the planet except us. Now, in terms of the gods of old, yes, I believe it. And what they've done is that the system that we serve has churned it all out into fantasy. It's all mythology. But, when we look at the model of man, and certainly within archaeology, there has been no connection to assume that we had in any way derived or gone through an evolutionary path from our cousins, the hominid, the ape. The apes are still here today. They're still around. But every time that they're trying to make a connection between, one to the other, they can't do it. And I know that there are some researchers who have astoundingly found out that we are a lot older than what we've been told. So I believe that the real story would have a lot of people's jaws literally on the floor. It does not take God out of the equation. We are looking at something, even in the Gnostic texts. I mean, very gently, it tells us a little bit more about the story that evolved with the goddess Sophia, the Aeon that removed herself away from the source of all that, wasn't ascended to created matter, and then gave birth, Immaculate Conception, to 𝗂𝗲𝗻𝗂. Interesting that Mary, one, because there's many abbots and masters that walk the planet, not just one. But she gave Immaculate Conception to Christ. So 𝗂𝗲𝗻𝗂 was, as we understand, was around. So I think there's a war, and the human has always been made to suffer. The system is adamant to crush us, but they need us for something. But I absolutely believe that we were created by so-called extraterrestrials. I believe that the Earth planet was not meant to turn out the way it was, the Garden of Eden. And it's possible that this war of good and bad, we see this in every single film and, everything that's written about the same theme, is an ongoing battle. So, I understand. I have a romantic vision of it. The gods coming forward, giants, intelligences, and I'd be the first to, like you, to welcome them, to try to understand, even if they were bad. I'd want to try and just understand about them, the passion,
Right.
the reality of that. I'd want nothing more than to have an extraterrestrial species in the physical, and conversely exchanging to say, okay, let me understand you. Please let me understand you. You understand us. Let's work together. And just to briefly finish off here, I wrote to Parliament years ago with another good friend of mine, Ross, and we wanted to bring 𝗤𝗎𝗄𝗎 to bring a table with ufologists here, because she had been instrumental in the Gary McKinnon case, who had obviously found all that information online. And, we said, let's put everything on the table. Let's work together as a unit. Silence. And I'm like, do you know what? Tells you everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
There you have it.
Absolutely. And, I won't even get into the Gary McKinnon, which is an absolutely fascinating story. We'll do that some of the time. I feel like he gave an interview, rather. He's still around.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I could have sworn that one would captivated me in my younger days because of how absurd the story was. Guys, we'll get into it at some other time. But Philip, it's the absolute pleasure, truly, to hear everything and everything you said. I really, really, really appreciate it. I know there's going to be a whole host of people that want to see and hear and more. Where can they see more from you?
Well, Philip Kinsella UFO on the internet, or my website is www.thekinsella_twins.com. And, check out, if I may, a number of books I've written there. So that's how they can get hold of me. And I'm very honored, also, Will, to have come on your show. I have to say I'm very grateful. I was a bit starstruck and stunned. I thought, oh my goodness, I was very nervous. But we are human and we are honest, and that's the way it is. So, but thank you very much indeed. It's been an intellectual treat to see how we grapple with these affairs by so. The good option.
No, you really, and I've been toying with the idea of actually kind of building panels in a sort of way to have discussions like this, whether they're in person or online, because I think as a viewer, I draw so much out of this, and especially when you can correlate people from different realms, and so that's kind of the idea. So I'd love to have you back on sometime to kind of do that with somebody who can kind of put the pieces and puzzles together from a different aspect. And I think people really enjoy that, and it's an intellectual, kind of like you said, treat for the brain when you can get people to okay, well, now I've got a little bit more, because it's certainly not going to come any other way. You have to keep and continue to push for the questions. So in any case, Philip, thank you, guys. We will link to everything right down below, or if you listen to this, it's in the show notes. And yeah, we'll see you guys later. Thanks again.